now to join another edition of Working for You.
University of the West Indies, and in particular the St. Augustine campus. How the University of the West Indies is collaborating with the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College in bringing programs, educational programs. Today I have my special guest, who is Dr. Wendell C. Wallace. And who is he? Dr. Wallace is an English-trained barrister, certified mediator with the Mediation Board of Trinidad and Tobago, and a criminologist who lectures on the criminology and criminal justice program at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago. He is a Deputy Dean for Distance Education and Outreach in the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. He has published 6 books and over 30 articles in regional and international journals. His research interests include policing, gangs, violence, domestic and school violence, and education-related issues. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this program, Dr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. It's my pleasure to be here sharing information and, pushing that collaboration with CFBC.
Right. And then I have Dr. Moya Rotham, who is no stranger to this program. She has been here before and, of course, holds the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, the interests of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College very highly. And so I want to welcome you as well, Dr. Rotham. Dr. Rotham is the Vice President, Academic Student Affairs at CFBC. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Then I have our veteran who has been in education, I think, for so many years. Miss Wanda Hughes. She's an educator at heart, and for the past number of years, she has been at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. When I went there to lecture, I knew her as the Dean of ASGS, which is Arts, Science, and General Studies. And now she's the Dean of the Faculty of Adult and Continuing Education, where she always would have wanted to be, at CFBC. Thank you very much to all 3 of you for coming today and sharing about what is happening at CFBC in collaboration with UWI. So I will start with you, Dr. Rotham. We are partnering with the University of the West Indies, certain programs. We call them Level 1 programs. Could you give us an overview, an explanation of what that program is all about?
Thank you, Lesoy. So the Level 1 UE program, this program is done in collaboration with UE St. Augustine, and it is a program which would have been born out of the need to offer the residents of the citizens of the Federation, to give them an opportunity to access higher education. And so persons can do their first year of study at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, and then they go to the St. Augustine campus. The courses, of course, the programs, they are done in collaboration with the Faculty of Social Sciences. And these, traditionally, we would have had a management of studies, economics, and accounting. And right now we are in the process of renegotiating for the revival of that franchise program, because we at the CFBC, we see it very important for Kittitians and Nevisians to access higher education. And it is one of the things that we really hold dear to our hearts, because we want to see that persons within the Federation, that there is that dialogue as it relates to, accessing higher education. We do not want to be left out of the loop. And so we see that there is the need for children from a very young age to start to have that discussion, to start having that dialogue, the conversations as it relates to college and university. We find that it is lacking, and we are hoping that we can do some work as it relates to, changing that mindset. And so Dr. Wallace is here with us on his visit, and he is seeking to, well, he has engaged some of the students of the Federation. Yesterday he would have gone to Nevis to have discussions with education officials. And so we are really on a mission to enhance the lives of Kittitians and Nevisians through access to higher education. So that is our aim. Even with the UE Level 1 program, it is not just even a matter of, say, going to St. Augustine. We want persons to bear in mind, yes, that St. Augustine, that's the goal. But if while doing the program, individuals may want to use those credits to go, to another UE campus, or we have had students who have used those same level 1 credits to access education in North America or Canada, wherever, globally. That's also an alternative, but we want to present this level 1 UE St. Augustine collaboration as an alternative, a viable alternative to accessing higher education.
Right. Dr. Rotham, we always hear about higher education. Higher. The stress on higher education. And what makes it higher? And at the very same time, by accessing higher education and having a higher education, does it make me higher?
All perception as well, Leroy, but of course higher education at the CFBC, we offer the highest level of certification that we offer in-house. It is an associate degree. And so higher education, we are asking, we are putting it there on the table that persons have that opportunity to pursue undergraduate studies. And of course, many individuals tend to see certification only as it relates to paper or it translates to money. But we always forget the human aspect of it as it relates to the development of those higher order thinking skills and those competencies that we need to navigate our way throughout society. So it is not just about the paper, but when you do engage with certain universities like the UE, it is not about just certification on paper. It is about the student leaving with a certain level of skills that can help to advance nation and region.
Right. I always see that, it is said that education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world.
Attitudes and values as well.
Attitudes and values.
Yes.
But sometimes when you look at the society, and I keep saying this all along, and you see people who are educated, so-called educated, they have doctorates, they have masters, they have bachelors, but they're not speaking up. They are silent. They are silent in the face of injustice. They are silent in the face of corruption. They are silent in the face of immorality. And you wonder why. And that is why I asked the question, what is this higher all about? Because we are not using our education to change the world. And sometimes people think it is just about money. But it can't be just about money. But an educated society certainly means that we will hold people to account for corruption and immorality and all of those things, and not just maintain the status quo. We have to upset the apple cart, really. But maybe I'm deviating there. But I'll go to Ms. Hughes. And Ms. Hughes, the benefits, what are the benefits of the UE Level 1 program to our people? What are the benefits, yeah? The tangible benefits of it.
The immediate benefit that comes to mind is the fact that the UE Level 1 program is significantly cheaper than actually going on campus. In fact, a student pays what would ordinarily pay for 3 courses at, say, the open campus, is what they pay for 10 courses at CFBC. So there's that immediate benefit. A student who is probably thinking, I can't afford to go to university,
Yes,
can come to CFBC and do that first year. After the first year is finished, well, before I get to that, there's also the benefit for persons who are adult. I'm thinking now not about those persons who are just finishing, say, the 6th form, but persons who are already adults, who have families and so on. It means that they can spend that year in St. Kitts, as opposed to being abroad for 3 years. They can actually be abroad for just 2. And I think that's important. A third element that is maybe a little bit, contradictory is that most of our level 1 students actually continue working. We try to timetable courses so they can hold their jobs while they're doing the program. And that's also important for persons who may be economically strapped. And so basically what the program does is it opens access to persons who may not otherwise think that they can actually do a degree at the University of the West Indies. So that's tremendously important. And then, of course, there are benefits like the networking that goes on. And they're building networks not just in relation to education, but then when education is finished and they move into their professional lives, those networks are going to continue. And just to give an example, basically when students move to St. Augustine, say, and issues come up, I actually would refer them to a student who had gone through the program earlier. And so there's that network that builds where they know they can find, and they pass around information, they pass around materials and so on and so forth, and those relationships continue. So many benefits.
right. Now what is the difference between this program, and I know that students can also enroll in the UE Open Campus?
The UE Open Campus is distance. Our program is actually face-to-face.
Okay. That's the,
So
that's
they
the-
come to CFB and they actually sit in a classroom with a lecturer. Now, we do exactly what is done at St. Augustine. We use the same course outlines, same materials, and so on and so forth. The coordinator for the course is at St. Augustine, but the lecturers at CFBC are delivering exactly what would be delivered at St. Augustine.
Right.
But face-to-face, as opposed to open campus where they're online, maybe asynchronous or synchronous, but that's a completely different thing.
Like Dr. Rotham, I know that we have the Bachelor in Nursing, is it?
That's the Bachelor's in Nursing,
Right,
Bachelor's
that's
of Science
another
in Nursing. That is
collaboration with UE.
with UE Mona. This is now with UE
That's Mona.
Yes.
And then we also have the postgraduate diploma
with
in education.
yes, with UE Cave Hill.
Cave Hill. Okay. So that is with Cave Hill and Mona.
Mona,
So we have relationships really with all the campuses.
Not all. With
Oh, yes, there's
because
one
you
in
do have
Antigua
5
now.
islands, and there's
There's
open
one in
campus,
Antigua
yes.
now, that's right.
And open campus.
And the
is,
open campus
yeah,
can be
right.
considered a campus
So with 3.
as well, so with 3. Okay, now, Dr. Wallace, tell us a little bit in terms of UWI's collaboration in St. Kitts and Nevis, in terms of distance education.
Okay, well, Lesroy, as Dr. Rotham said, I have the responsibility for distance education and outreach. And as part of my responsibility for that portfolio, I must ensure that not only the relationship that we have in place, that it remains intact, but that we look for new programs, that we foster collaborations, and not only collaborations in the context of teaching and learning, but collaborations in the context of research. Dr. Rotham and I, we have collaborated, or we are in the process of collaborating on at least 2 papers. We also look at training, and training in the context of, for example, we have mediation, restorative justice, and some other programs. But it's a broad-based approach where we want to collaborate. We want to strengthen that relationship. We want to look at research, we want to look at education, we want to look at training. In fact, Dr. Rotham would tell you that over the past year or so, any of the activities that we have at St. Augustine, that an invitation has been extended. We've had programs on mental health and youth, for example, students who are going through challenges due to COVID. We've had a policing symposium, and CFBC forms an integral part of what we do in the Faculty of Social Sciences.
Mm-hmm. Right, so you want to strengthen the collaboration.
Yes.
You want to strengthen the relationship. And there are certain things that you are putting in place to bring about that objective.
Yes, that's right, certainly. So I don't know if you will allow me to speak to some of those, yes. So for example, we have a 40-hour mediation program. And that program teaches persons how to become mediators. That course is taught wholly online. So you can remain here as well if you're interested. Mm-hmm. You can remain here in St. Kitts and Nevis and actually be part of that 40-hour training program. You are certified from the University of the West Indies. And there's another element to that whereby you can become a certified mediator, for example, for persons in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not certain what the legislation here is or if it would allow you to become a certified mediator in St. Kitts and Nevis, but you will certainly be certified. And in fact, if you complete that course, you can become certified in Trinidad and Tobago as a mediator, right? So that's one of the courses that we're pushing. This course is not only for persons at CFBC. Police officers, persons in the media, educators, taxi drivers, nurses, if you're a stay-at-home husband or wife, anyone and everyone, they're welcomed into the program. And the reason for that is that mediation can be used in any facet of life. I'm certain you may have to mediate at your home, at the workplace, at schools, etc. So the mediation program is very much useful. In fact, on Monday and just this morning, I had meetings with some police officers, and they expressed a great interest in the mediation program. So that's just one of the programs that we're pushing at this point in time. We also have a restorative justice program, a 40-hour restorative justice program. That program, again, it's taught wholly online, so you do not have to leave your jurisdiction to come to Trinidad and Tobago to be certified in restorative justice. Why are we focusing on restorative justice and mediation? As you may be aware, in the Caribbean, there's that shift in terms of reforming criminal justice systems. So we are generally moving away from that strict punitive approach to let's mediate, for example. Additionally, when you look at criminal justice systems, again, throughout the Caribbean, as I said, they're going through that evolutionary process where we're moving away from punishment. But in Trinidad and Tobago, and I dare say in most Caribbean countries, you have huge backlog of cases in the courts, right? whereby, everything that happens, for example, between neighbors, we want our day in the sun, we want to go to court. But there are issues that we can resolve via mediation without going to court, and that will reduce the backlog. So for those two reasons, among other reasons, we are here, or I am here on behalf of the Faculty of Social Sciences to really push mediation and restorative justice for persons in the Federation. Now, just permit me, we also have a third course, tourism-oriented policing, that that course is already developed. It has already been taught to police officers in the Tobago division of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Now, most Caribbean countries depend on tourism for their sustenance. In fact, if you were to look at Tobago, for example, approximately 80% of Tobago's income comes from tourism or its byproduct. And some people may ask, well, why tourism-oriented policing, or what is tourism-oriented policing? Tourism-oriented policing speaks to having a special unit within police departments that focus their attention on crimes by and against tourists. And it's important that we have police officers who are specifically trained in tourism-oriented policing to police those tourists. In the Caribbean, we've only had 2 jurisdictions where you have tourism-oriented policing. That's in Tobago and in St. Lucia. So we're here to push that course as well.
I have seen in the Dominican Republic that they have tourism-oriented policing. In fact, there are some police that are just working in terms of the safety and all of that for tourists.
Yes.
For tourists.
Yes.
And I think here recently in St. Kitts, we've had a number of officers, I think, that are now working in terms of keeping tourists safe and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yes, that was explained to me just this morning. They said that you have some island constables.
They're called
Yes,
island constables, yes.
But that they were desirous of having them actually being trained as a tourism-oriented policing unit with that specific training. And yes, you're quite correct in Dominic. In the DR, they have that training as well, as focusing on the English-speaking Caribbean. But even if you look at the Dutch Caribbean, you have Aruba. In Aruba, I also understand that they are police officers who are specifically trained, and that's their duties. They are not generalists. They are specifically trained to deal with tourists. Yeah.
And I do know that the ministry, while speaking about mediation, that the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs has had some workshops to train mediators as well here in St. Kitts. And it's for the same reasons that you gave, in terms of not everybody has to go to court. Things can be resolved. There can be mediation, and things don't have to end up in the court. And so therefore there's a backlog, and you're clogging up the court with all of these petty issues.
Yes. And let's why before you move on, one of the things I want to add is that within the past 3 weeks, we at the Faculty of Social Sciences at St. Augustine, we have conducted restorative justice training to the judicial officers in the Turks and Caicos Islands just 3 weeks ago, because they are looking to reform their criminal justice system. So I tell people that restorative justice mediation, it's an incoming tide, and we need to get on board, even though jurisdictions may not have the legislation in place just yet. Sooner or later, there will be that need for mediators and for persons who are trained in restorative justice.
Right. I noticed, Dr. Wallace, that you've done a lot of research in gang violence and so on as well.
Yes, certainly.
Of course, we have here in the Federation what you call some alternative pathway lifestyle. You've heard of it, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
What is commonly referred to as a peace program.
Yes.
In which we have made significant gains in the reduction in gun crimes and gun violence. And the rehabilitation of these people must be stressed.
Yes, certainly.
Because if there's not a change in heart and there's a change in mind, that should be the motive. Otherwise, you'll end back up from where you came.
Yes. You know, you mentioned something there, and I'm wondering if you've actually been exposed to a program in Trinidad and Tobago that we call the Hearts and Minds program. Because that's the essence of it, that you need to change the hearts and the minds of these individuals. Rehabilitation and reintegration into society is key. And as you rightfully said, if our focus is solely on arrest, on incarceration, and we do not rehabilitate these individuals, unless they die in prison, they will be returning to the very same communities from whence they came. And if they are not retooled, retrained, and recalibrated, then they return to us in a worse condition than when they went in. So we need to focus our attention on, you know, rehabilitative programs. And you know, one of the things I spoke about this morning is something called virtual visitation, which for some persons, it may be new. But virtual visitation basically speaks to having inmates, having persons who are incarcerated, having that ability to be visited by their loved ones. Because the research has shown that those persons who are not afforded family visits, they tend to become lost in the system. They believe that no one cares about them, and you know, it perpetuates that pipeline, that recycling of these individuals. So yes, I do agree that we really need to focus on rehabilitation and reintegration, Lesroy.
Yes, and the empowerment of people.
Yes.
So, you know, sometimes people don't have jobs, you know, or they don't have, and you help them to get jobs. You help them to help themselves. But at the very same time, that heart and mind change must be, because you may give them some money. You may give them some money, and money is just not going to do it.
Correct.
You know? Because money, we think, solves all problems, but money does not solve all problems.
Short-term gains versus the long-term gains. So if you give them the monies, of course, short-term gains, but if you empower them, if you rehabilitate, if you train, retool, and give them those life skills, those are, you know, better options. But unfortunately, sometimes the leadership in the Caribbean region, I'm saying this boldly, the leadership in the Caribbean, we tend to focus on the short-term gains. And sometimes we as a population, we want the short-term gains as well, rather than looking at the long-term benefits. Yeah.
And I noticed you had the domestic violence safety plans.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, I am also a researcher into domestic violence. But when I examine domestic violence, I tend to look at it from a gender-neutral perspective. And this has led me into conflicts with some of my colleagues. You know, I don't want to say the feminists, you know, that might be a strong word, but it has gotten me into conflict with some of my colleagues in that they tend to see domestic violence as being a female issue. Some people see it as a male issue. And I tell people domestic violence is a people issue. The data has shown for every Caribbean island where data is available that you have more men as perpetrators, without a doubt, more men as perpetrators and more women as victims. So 80% of the domestic violence cases throughout the Caribbean, you find women, approximately 75 to 80% women are victims. But you have that 25%, 20 to 25%, the silent minority of men. They are also victims of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, partner abuse, whatever we want to call it. They are victims. But what happens is that quite often, we as a society, we scorn and we tend to look down on persons who remain in those abusive situations. And we tell them, well, Lesroy, why didn't you get out of that domestic violence situation? But what we don't do is that we don't teach them how to get out of those situations. And in fact, last year, August, I was conducting some research in Tobago on domestic violence, and a male told me, he said, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm in this relationship, I want to leave, I don't know where to leave, and I don't know where to look for help. And a female told me, again paraphrasing, everybody telling me to leave, but nobody telling me how to leave. And it struck a chord in me, and for days, Lesroy, I pondered about it. And then, you know, I got one of these aha moments, one of these light bulbs going off. Yeah. And I started conducting research on domestic violence safety plans. I actually, a colleague of mine in Trinidad and Tobago, Superintendent Andre Norton, and myself, we are working on this safety plan, where the aim is to teach persons in those relationships how to be safe when you're at home. So, for example, try to avoid entering rooms where you have weapons. So if you're in a conflict, if you're in an argument or something, try to go to the bedroom or your living room. So, you know, we teach them how to be safe within the home. We are also trying to teach them how to be safe on your way to work, how to be safe at the workplace. So inform your supervisors that you are a victim of domestic violence. You know, it may be easy for us to say, but it's a protective measure. Now, the domestic violence safety plans involves 3 actors. It involves the victim, it involves the organization, the workplace, but it also involves the government. So governments are now being encouraged to stop placing that blame, that onerous blame on the victims to do everything to protect themselves. And one of the things that can be done is, for example, having a warning system whereby both the victim and the perpetrator, they wear an electronic bracelet. And if they come within a certain distance of one another, it sends off a signal, flashing lights and loud signals. But in addition to that, we are looking at a system where even at your home, you have a system, because that's what some of the perpetrators are doing. They know that we can't attack you at work. So we're going to wait for you at home, and as soon as you leave your home, or even while you're in the home, they break into the home. So you put out what is called a locator into the home, so that if the perpetrator gets within, let's say, 800 meters, again, it sends off a signal. So that's the essence of the domestic violence safety plan.
Right, and domestic violence does not only include intimate partners. I think it includes the children.
Correct.
It's a whole cycle which includes, sometimes children are abused and all of that in the home, domestically.
Yes.
You know.
Again, you're quite correct, Lesroy. When you look at the definition of domestic violence throughout the Caribbean, it's broad, so it speaks to children. In fact, it speaks to anyone living within the same home, whereas intimate partner violence would be violence perpetuated by a spouse, ex-spouse against one another. But domestic violence is quite broad, and you are quite correct. Quite often it impacts children.
Yes, and some people say gender-based violence. That's a term that we hear all the time now, and it includes man and woman, it includes men and men, women and women, because there's also violence within same-sex relationships and so on. So it is not always heterosexual violence. It's...
Yes, again, you know, just yesterday I was telling one of Dr. Rutham's colleagues at the CFBC that a critique of the amended Domestic Violence Act in Trinidad and Tobago is that it doesn't take into account what people see as the others, and that whether one belongs to the LGBTQIA community, whether you belong to it or not, whether you subscribe to their values, to me that doesn't matter.
It's gender-based.
Exactly. And that all laws, we must think about those individuals. I know in the Caribbean, you know, we're very conservative, and some people may be looking for Wallace to kill him for the comment that I've made. But that's just the fact. We have to look at all components of society.
Right. So all of these programs, the criminology, criminal justice, the mediation program, the restorative justice program, the tourism-oriented policing, domestic violence safety plans are programs that are geared towards the development of our society, really. Helping our society to really develop. As you correctly said, most of the Caribbean countries are, their economies are based on tourism, and we have a lot of, crime issues within the Caribbean, and, to deal with those. The restorative justice. Doctor, explain a little bit in terms of what that means, just for the general public. What is restorative justice? What are you restoring? Because something is taken away from me, so what is being restored? And how do you go about restoring it? Because we hear a lot of talk in the Caribbean about reparations, and I suspect that reparations is some sort of a restorative justice, that you want something repaired, you want something restored. How do you go about that?
Well, that's a very interesting question, a difficult one at that, Lesroy. You reminded me of one of my lecturers who would say, Wendell, you need to answer the difficult ones, right? But nonetheless, restorative justice is a process whereby the community or all stakeholders come together to try to resolve a social harm. Now, in order to fully explain restorative justice, I have to go back to what is a social harm. Now, we see harms, or when we talk about social harm, we talk about crime, right? So what is a crime? The state has taken responsibilities for crimes. So you would see in a legal matter, you'll see R versus, right? So that means it's the state versus Lesroy Williams for murder, as the case may be. But in effect, the crime was not committed against the state. The crime was committed against someone in the community. So a crime is seen as a social harm, where people within a community, they are harmed. And instead of going the legal way of the police being involved, you're taken to court, you're tried, a magistrate or judge imposes a sentence. With restorative justice, all the parties who were harmed come together to decide the outcome. So let me use an example. Let us suppose that Lesroy resides in the Bird Rock community. He's a youth of 16 years old, and he breaks into the home of Wendell Wallace, and he pushes the elderly Wallace down the ground. He steals some monies, then he ran through my corn patch and destroyed all my corn, etc., etc. Restorative justice says, let us bring the people who are involved together to deal with that social harm. Because Dr. Rotham, who lives next door, who is an elderly female, she might have been traumatized by the fact that Lesroy victimized Wendell. So she is a victim as well. She's a victim of a social harm.
Yes. So
what we do with restorative justice, we bring Lesroy together with Wendell. You have community residents. You may be here with your parents. You have a representative from the judicial system, right? And we all work together to resolving and to restoring. In other words, we want to bring the community back to where it was before. Now, in some countries, restorative justice is voluntary. So we cannot force the alleged offender, we cannot force Lesroy to attend. In some jurisdictions, you can be mandated by the court, right? And the state gets involved as well. Now, with restorative justice, the offender, Lesroy, has to own up. He has to take accountability for that offense. So if Lesroy isn't willing to take accountability for his offense, it doesn't make sense bringing you to restorative justice, right? And the benefits of restorative justice is that Lesroy gets to choose his, I don't want to use the term punishment, but he gets to choose his outcome, or how am I going to satisfy my accountability for the social harm that I caused. When you're in the court, are you given that opportunity? No. the magistrate or judge says you are sentenced to 6 months, 8 months, 2 years as the case may be. Whereas with restorative justice, Lesroy will say, for example, Dr. Wallace, I'm so sorry, I'm apologetic for the harm, for breaking into your home and destroying your corn patch. I am willing to replant your corn patch. I am willing to clean your yard for the next 2 years, as the case may be. And the community may say, the community resident, Dr. Rotham, who was directly impacted, she may say, well, I was so scared by what I saw that, I would rather that you do not pass on this side of my house, you use that side. So it's a more communal approach to dealing with crime and dealing with social harm.
Right. Now, I know that in the absence of sometimes faith in the justice system, you speak about restorative justice, but then you have kangaroo courts and you have jungle justice.
Yes, that's so true. That's right. But what happens?
Because sometimes you may think, they're taking things into their own hands. This is how we are going to deal with you in the community. You've, committed a social harm, and we are going to deal with you. So that is not seen as restorative. That is seen as you taking the law into your own hands.
Yes, and you're quite correct. The difference between restorative justice and having a kangaroo court is that with the restorative justice systems, when they are fully implemented and they functional, you have someone from the judiciary present to ensure that people are not imposing extremely harsh outcomes. So for example, using the example where Lesroy is 16 years old, someone in the community may say, well, yes, he pushed down old Mr. Wallace, and he should be, for the next 5 years or the next 10 years, he should be, no, we don't want, the aim is not kangaroo or jungle justice. The aim is to restore harm, and I said that's why you will have someone from the judiciary present as well.
Right, I see Dr. Rotham laugh because I think she's sort of familiar with that thinking in Jamaican society. The community comes together and they deal with you.
Yes.
Right, so good. Now the UWI is our premier tertiary institution, especially in English-speaking Caribbean. Now, there are so many universities all over the world. Why study at UWI? We are getting a lot of students now who are saying that, UWI makes things too difficult for students. They say there are too many administrative hiccups. What argument will you put forward for people, especially Caribbean people, to study at the University of the West Indies? I studied there. Right. Dr. Rotham studied there. Miss Hughes, you studied elsewhere. But still, you understand the importance of UWI.
Why study at UWI? There are several arguments that I can put forward, but I'll start by saying that I'm a UWI product through and through. I did my undergraduate, I did my master's, I did my PhD at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. But I've also studied elsewhere. I've studied at the University of London. I've studied at Newcastle, Northumbria University Law School in Newcastle, in England. And there are strengths and weaknesses to every institution. It's just that some institutions, their challenges may be put to the fore more frequently than others. But I dare say, even at Northumbria University where I attended, they were not perfect. At the University of the West Indies, I can say that we are the premier tertiary institution in the Caribbean. In fact, we ranked in the top, I think it's the top 5, or the top 3, globally. So it means that we are doing something that's correct. Added to that, most of the teaching and learning that takes place at the University of the West Indies, we infuse it with local context. So students are able to understand that context rather than what we call universalizing or taking concepts from Europe and imposing them on us. We need to develop systems, we need to develop infrastructures that are unique to us in the Caribbean. In fact, just let me digress a bit. Yesterday, one of the young lads who I spoke to, and I was so impressed by this young man, who said he wants to be a scientist because he wants to develop medicines and medication that are based in the Caribbean. And I applauded him because most of our medications, they're imported, right? But as we on this panel would know, we have something called bush medicine that isn't really bush medicine. These are proven successes. It's just that we are so used to the importation of concepts and infrastructures that are foreign to us. So UE is, as I said, we are one of the top global institutions. You have local context. Yes, we have administrative issues. I would be the last person to stand or to sit here and say we do not have administrative issues. The fact is that the University of the West Indies, as an entity, as well as the University of the West Indies, as St. Augustine, and I can speak conclusively for St. Augustine, we have become more student-friendly. In the drive over to the studio here, that was one of our discussions, that we are becoming more and more student-friendly. I even shared a joke where, they are leaning so much more. We have come from the left and we have gone almost to the right as it relates to dealing with students and student issues. So we're becoming more and more student-friendly. We are also producing more and more graduates who occupy positions globally, not only regionally, not only locally. You yourself, Lesroy, said you are a product. We have several products of the University of the West Indies occupying positions of eminence throughout the region, locally, regionally, internationally. So there are many reasons why people should come to the UE. It's local, it's ours, right? And we need to build that Caribbeanness and stop that reliance on outside entities. We have been independent nations for, in some instances, over 50, over 60 years, and we need to develop and to build on what we already have in the region.
I totally agree with you. Ms. Hughes, I know that there are some people who, for some reason, missed out on an opportunity. It is not that they never had the capacity or the potential to get a few subjects, improve themselves in terms of their knowledge and their skills, to better their lives, finding a job, and in terms of helping their own human development. Now, you are the Dean of what we call ACE, or the Adult and Continuing Education, that affords such persons, another chance. Could you tell us a little bit in terms of the, adult and continuing education and the importance of it? Because sometimes when people start to work, they think that, I'm getting some money, and so therefore, I don't need to go and do English, or I don't need to go and do maths. And sometimes I encounter that because they think, because I am making some money, this is not important now to me.
When I speak about adult education and continuing education, at CFBC, one of the first things that I like to highlight is the fact that we have open admissions. And that's significant for those persons who either didn't finish high school or didn't pass any subjects or whatever. And as you rightly said, a lot of them are extremely bright. Sometimes when I encounter them, I wonder what happened. Because it's crazy that they don't have the 7 subjects, 9 subjects like everybody else. But of course things happen, and sometimes they just don't get to do what they were supposed to do. And so with open admissions, it means you apply, you indicate you're interested in ACE, and it's automatic admission. Even if you don't get a letter, you don't have to worry about it. You're automatically a student. And you access CSEC level, so the 5th form, English, maths, human and social biology, and so on. But we as students have life experience, professional experience, so they can also access the advanced level. So we've had students without subjects, CSEC subjects, who've gone straight to advanced level and have excelled at advanced level. Because of course, as long as you're alive, you're learning. And so they bring that value to the classroom. So that's the first thing I like to highlight, because it's extremely important for people to know that they can come and they don't have to worry about whether or not they'd be accepted. The other thing they need to know is that we meet them where they are. So it's not like you come and we expect you to be here. It is that you come, and wherever you are, we work with you. Because of course, many of them are working, our classes begin at 5 in the afternoon, so that they don't have to worry about the clash with the work hours. But the other thing I would like to highlight is the fact that, of course, some people work on shift. So we have students who they can come this week, maybe next week they can't. And we also try to accommodate them as much as possible. We have a core of lecturers who are quite flexible. We also, and well, it's the one positive about COVID probably. Because of COVID, everybody is now equipped for distance education. And so where we have students who, they work in shifts, they can't be there this week, it means that they can access, if not the class itself, they can access the course material online and then do everything possible to ensure that those persons can access education just like everybody else. And we've had success. I think it's important to highlight that, because sometimes people think, yeah, you have that, but we have had persons who've come with nothing in 2 years, 5 C6 subjects, and of course they're working, they have families, 5 C6 subjects. In 5 years, a CAPE associate degree, and a CAPE associate degree with honors. So it's something that can be done. We also fill gaps though for persons, you talk about the persons without English and without maths, and I know sometimes, especially when they're working for government, sometimes the pay gets capped here simply because they don't have English or they don't have maths. So you can come in and you can do the single subject.
Sometimes, not always.
But they can come and they can get that one subject that they may need to. We of course also have short courses. So if persons are only interested in, I've had persons who came and they're like, you know what, I'm going to retire in 2 years, I'm looking at, you know, something to keep me occupied when I'm at home and so on. So they'd come and they'd do a baking course, for instance. So we try to cater for everybody.
Right. Now the UE Level 1 program is face-to-face. How did you experience it over the past 2 years with the pandemic, the COVID-19?
Okay, we did not have we didn't have Level 1 this year because of the renegotiation of the agreement. However, the last cohort that we had, they dealt with the start of the pandemic. And we used all kinds of strategies. Some lecturers Zoomed, some lecturers used Google Classroom. And UE, you know, I didn't go to UE, so
yes.
I wasn't a part of the question just now. But what I will say is we had instances where the coordinators actually set up sessions so that they were able to interact with those students and ensure that they were up to speed. So it actually worked despite the fact that we were suddenly locked down and offline, and so on and so forth. You know, basically at CFB we accommodated, and St. Augustine accommodated the students as well.
Right, right. Good. Now, Dr. Wallace, you said that these programs that you mentioned were all online programs?
Some of the programs are,
Some are-
yes, some are, for example, the mediation program, that's fully online.
Yes.
The restorative justice program, that's fully online. The domestic violence safety plan, that's not a course per se, but it's just to expose
Yes,
persons, right?
yes.
Which I think we did that during the week here. The tourism-oriented policing course, that course is already in place. It has been taught face-to-face to the Tobago Police Division. But there may be the need, let's suppose, if the Commissioner of Police, if he agrees to this course, we may have to do it blended, meaning that part may have to be face-to-face and part may have to be online. The reason for that is that one component of the course is that there is something called a FAM course, or a familiarity course, where they go to a particular area. So we may send some police officers to Bird Rock, we may send some to Frigate Bay and say, okay, well, we're dropping you here as a tourist. What are some of the challenges that you think a tourist may encounter? And then they write a report. Or you are a police officer working in this area and you see a tourist walking along the street at night. How will you interact with the student? So some of the elements, they are actually face-to-face and some are online.
Okay. Tell me something about in terms of the stakeholders you have met with here, in terms of making a pitch for these programs. Because you've met with quite a number of stakeholders on your visit.
Okay, well, the main purpose of the visit was to foster and to continue that relationship with the CFBC.
Yes.
So the CFBC is our major stakeholder on this island.
Yes.
And, you know, I must say thanks to Dr. Rotham, CFBC, thanks to Wanda, in terms of the hospitality and putting things in place, because, you know, that's the main focal point. On the other hand, I've met with students, because the educational aspect, I've met with students. In fact, I've gone to Nevis. I've met with their Ministry of Education officials there. I've met, so students, Ministry of Education officials. This morning I've met with police officers. Yesterday I met with persons from, I think it was gender.
Gender affairs.
Gender affairs, yeah. So I've met with at least 4 different stakeholders. And of course today, this is the broader stakeholder that we're reaching out to.
Right, to the public.
To the public, yes.
And this
Yes.
evening.
And yes, thanks for that reminder. This afternoon, there is a lecture at 5 p.m. on tourism-oriented policing. And hopefully we'll meet with, hopefully we may have 1 or 2 state officials, police officials attending. Thus far, I think only one person from the judiciary. So the judiciary was represented. Unfortunately, I think we didn't have any officials from the prison. I was hoping to meet with the prisons as part of that whole judiciary, national security, criminal justice theme. But let me just put a pitch here that at 5 p.m. this afternoon, we have a lecture on tourism-oriented policing at the CFBC, and I'm hoping that we'll have more of the police officials present, as well as persons who are interested, whether persons from hotel management, security companies. It's free.
What time
that's
is
a
it?
bonus. It's at 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Dr. Rotham, someone informed me that some persons were trained, or some lecturers at the college were trained in restorative practices at CFBC.
There are a number of us on staff who thought it prudent to participate in the mediation program. There's a mediation program that would have been, it would have been facilitated
Yes.
by the judiciary within the OECS and the government here, along with St. Augustine. The trainers actually came from the Faculty of Social Science, St. Augustine, and I think it was about 4 of us, myself included, we participated in this program, and we are actually court-trained mediators. And so we have not only, we didn't do this program just for the sake of serving nation at the judiciary level, at that level. We thought it prudent to engage in this to also just to serve the CFBC and to serve community at large, because as Dr. Wallace would have emphasized, mediation, it's one of those skills that can be used anywhere. And if it is that you can focus on that, on the resolution of conflict, it is very important. So yes, we would have been trained in the arts of mediation.
Okay. We are going to go to the phone lines and see if anyone has anything that they want to contribute to this discussion. The numbers to call are 466-2666, that's 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the international number is 1-239-645-4500. We welcome your calls. Now, of course, one of the things, if we want people to get interested and to sign up for some of these programs, is that we need to have some sort of active marketing. A marketing strategy. So, do we have one? Are we going to put one in place? Is the college going to work along with the University of the West Indies in marketing these to the general public?
Well, the marketing has already started,
It has.
It has already started. Dr. Wallace's visit
Yes,
has.
yes, that's part of it.
And
But
so
I mean,
we will, yes.
when he's gone, what happens?
Yes, so it continues. So we will continue to collaborate, and we will, as he has said, you know, we have whet some appetites, and so we will put things in place, because one of the things we need to understand is that we have to be very strategic and intentional in our endeavors. And so something like this, it will now, but based on, you know, further discussions with St. Augustine and with community, and then also the internal structures at the CFBC in order to make these things happen and to put the relevant marketing strategies in place to accommodate such.
Right, so we've started. Dr. Wallace is here. He has met with several stakeholders. He's trying to get people interested in these programs, but he goes back to St. Augustine, and we have to see how we can keep people's interest. And keep these things going.
Right. If I may just jump in here, Lesroy. We have the Restorative Justice Program. We have a planned program, and my intention is to send it on to the CFBC. We already have it in place, because, you know, in the context of marketing these programs, I wouldn't put the sole onus on the CFBC. So as soon as we at the FSS, at the St. Augustine campus, as soon as we have that, for example, our flyers, our dates, as soon as we have that set, what we will do is that we will send them on to the CFBC, and they will continue the marketing from this end. But what it also means is that we will be doing our marketing, because we use our social media platforms to put the information out there as well. But because in this instance, we are specifically targeting persons in the Federation, I will be sending the information to CFBC. So at this point in time, we have the Restorative Justice course tentatively scheduled for the 11th to the 15th of July. The cost is 6,000 TT or 1,000 USD per participant. However, we are very much mindful that if one organization decides that they're sending 15 or 20 persons, I've seen where the faculty decides, okay, we'll give a discount of 100 US. I'm just using that figure, but they will be giving discounts for organizations that send large numbers. As it relates to the mediation course, there should be a mediation program maybe sometime in between August to December of 2022. That has not been finalized just yet, but as soon as it is finalized, that will be sent directly to the CFBC. And they have been, in the past, they have done a good job at assisting us collaboratively to market the programs.
Okay. Good. Well, we're almost out of time. Is there anything else that you want to mention, Dr. Rothan?
No, we are just keen. I think the three of us here, we are very passionate about, education, and we would just like to see that that change in, mindset. Many individuals, they come to the CFBC and they expect us to work miracles. But I, often see that we have to understand that we are within an ecology, and we have to understand that one thing impacts the next. And so by the time students come to the CFBC, there are certain skills, certain values, competencies, attitudes that should be not necessarily set, but they should be present, and we continue to develop and to hone. Sometimes, they aren't there, and then, we are expected to work miracles. So I am just hoping that when we market and while we share this information, that individuals will see the importance of having that conversation about higher education, going on to university, going on to college, even as it relates to skills, trying to become skilled and to be, certified, and to try to perfect your craft, whatever it is that you decide to do. Try to be good and to have some kind of certification. Because whether or not we want to believe it, Les Roy, we do see situations where, even here within the Federation, individuals who they are able, but they do not have the paper to show. And we see the building of these hotels, they have to be importing labor. Yes, because there are standards. These hotels, these institutions, they have to build according to international standards. And a part of that has to do with the validation of skills certification. So even if we go there, we do see the need for having that dialogue, that conversation as it relates to education and skill training.
Ms. Hughes?
If I were to add anything, it would be that education is also important in terms of, I call it's freedom.
Yes.
It's freedom in the context of you're in that job, you're not enjoying yourself because of one reason or the other, and you simply go, you know what, I'm moving. And you write a letter of resignation and you move on, and because you have certification, you can go elsewhere and you can walk into a post. And I can use one of my former students who she was actually working on her CAPE associate degree, and when her workplace closed down, she had a job before her final day was done. A few years earlier, she had nothing. So it's very important in terms of giving you that leeway to do whatever you feel like doing. And then we have a population that's constantly moving, lots of migration. When you go to other places, they're not going to hire you because they know somebody across the road who said that you're skilled at whatever. Without the paper, you have nothing. And so even though in a lot of ways it's just paper, it's paper that's extremely important. And so for persons who are not, I like to talk to people who are not certified at all. They need to get that certification. And unfortunately, we have a lot of young people. If you're 65 and you're not certified, I don't suppose it's a tragedy. But when you're 25 and you're not certified and you have another 25, 30 years in the workforce, it becomes a tragedy.
Yeah.
There's another element that people also need to think about. You're raising children, you don't have certification. When they decide that they're going to drop out, what do you tell them? You really don't have a leg to stand on, because they can tell you, well, you don't have any, so. But when you have that certification, you could say to them, listen, you have to do, and they have to listen to you because you know. And one of the examples I like to use is our top performing students at CFBC, at least in ASGS. Let me speak about ASGS in particular. The top performing students usually come from families where the parents have been there, done that. And I know some of our state scholars, at least 2 of them, their parents were state scholars. And I know one in particular decided, my father did it, I have to do it too. And so there's that element as well where when you have it, then your kids come behind and they do the same thing. When you don't have it, they come behind, and as soon as things get rough, they figure, you know what, my mother dropped out, so I'm going to drop out too.
Yes, and that is so true. And from our discussion today, what I like about these programs that Dr. Wallace spoke so highly about is that, you know, in a country, you can have good roads, good infrastructure, you can have nice buildings, nice schools, nice hospitals, and all of that. But our most important asset is our people. And a lot of these programs really spoke to the psychosocial development of our people. Human development is the highest form of development. You can have economic development, you can have sustainable development, but none of those would be possible without human development. You know, and so therefore, these things, how we treat other people in terms of, you know, domestic violence, how we treat our visitors, the tourists, those who come to us, you know, in terms of how do we understand the concept of justice and how people must be treated fairly and given what is their due, and so on. And helping people to resolve conflict using mediation. All of these things are so important. We may not see them as, you know, probably things in which we are going to make a lot of money. But at the very same time, you know, you're making an important contribution to the development of yourself and the development of our society. And we need to move beyond, I think, in our society. People need to be self-actualized. Sometimes I feel as though we are stuck at give them some entertainment, give them some food, give them some drink, you fool them, and that is where we are stuck. Are we moving on to those higher things that are just more than the physical? How we love each other, you know? How we treat each other, you know? Sense of fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, the food and the drink and the clothes and the entertainment, are those the things that really define us as a people? If that is the case, we are in a very sad place. We're in a very sad place. We have to think about those higher things of justice, social justice, how we treat people, and so on. Dr. Wallace, before we go, what would be your...
Well, Roy, thanks for having me here. It's a really pleasure to come and share the information and to receive the hospitality of the Federation as well. I just like to leave the young persons out there young adults, juveniles, parents, as we touched on, if I were to leave one parting word or two parting words, I'll say certification, that's one. And do note that education is an investment in self. Those are the words I'd like to leave with the persons in the Federation today.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you to Dr. Moya Rotham, our VP, Student and Academic Affairs at CFBC. Of course, you know, she has her hands full because the college does not have a president at this time, and Dr. Rotham is the one holding on and performing those functions of the leader of the CFBC. And we want to wish her all the best, and of course that, you know, she be given the everything to be able to fulfill her role. And to Ms. Hughes, we want to thank you. Ms. Hughes, have you ever done anything else apart from education?
Yes.
Or you have? Okay, right. But most of your life has been spent in education. Right, good. Okay. And Dr. Wallace, you have published many books. We did not get a chance to speak of your many books, at least 6.
Yes.
And you have written a number of articles in regional and international journals and so on. Maybe that is a topic for another time.
Yes.
But it is quite an accomplishment, I think. You know, so I want to thank you very much for coming and sharing with us today on such the important issue of the collaboration that UWI has with the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, and how that relationship can be strengthened, which is so important. We really appreciate having you here today.
Thank you, that's right. Thanks a lot.
Okay. I want to thank all of our listeners to today's program. Next week we will be back with another edition of Working for You. Until then, take care. I am Les Roy Williams.
They had it, folks, another edition of Working for You here on WINN FM 98.9. Up next, we got business, conscious business.